Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to Geeks Not Nerds, the podcast. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Shades.
And Shades and I today are going to do our fourth installment in our series of X-Men films. Shades, I feel like we're getting toward the end now. I'm gonna be sad to see it end here pretty soon.
Yeah. After we do the next one, we've got to wait till the Wolverine to come out till we do another one.
Yeah, that's right. But the nice thing is we've got the Wolverine, and the very following year we have another one. So
yeah, they're really pumping them out now.
Yeah, which is fine with me if they're awesome.
Exactly.
So speaking of awesome, this isn't really that, but we're gonna do the commentary on it anyway. The good news is we probably will be far less depressed than we were doing X3. So
yes, this isn't quite as painful an experience.
No, and Shades, did you have what I had with this movie, where like I liked it a lot better the first time around?
Yeah, the first time I saw it, I really liked it. And,
I had a pretty positive review the first time I saw it, and then after that, it went downhill from there.
Yeah, well, what's funny is that I liked it at first, and still to this day, I don't hate it by any stretch of the imagination. But there are people who like this a lot less than X-Men 3, funny enough.
Well, that's interesting. We'll have to kind of keep our eyes peeled and see maybe why that is.
Well, I can bet the Deadpool fans have a reason to, but anyway.
Well, fair enough. And actually, this will be more interesting for me watching this again now that I know a bit more about Deadpool, because I just got finished doing a lot of reviews of early Deadpool comics and was not familiar with the character whatsoever when I first saw this. So,
yeah. Same with me, really.
Well, if you have never listened to one of our commentaries before, what we do is we do a podcast and a commentary simultaneously. So you can theoretically listen to our podcast if you know the film pretty well, and we'll do our listen to it without watching the film. We'll do our very, very best to provide you plenty of context while we're watching the film. But the most fun way, of course, is to listen to this while also watching the movie. What you want to do is put in your DVD, your Blu-ray, or however you have the film in right now. Put it to timestamp 0. So get past the menu, get the film all rigged up, queued up to timestamp 0, and then press play when we get started. Shades, are you ready?
Sure am.
All right, here we go. Everybody, please press play right now. So the first thing that did sort of worry me about this film going in right away was just the fact that it had to have the word X-Men in it.
Yeah, it's funny because I was okay with the title of the film because they did a bunch of X-Men Origins comics.
Okay.
Like there was an X-Men Origins Wolverine, and there was, an X-Men Origins Cyclops and Iceman and Emma Frost and Gambit. So it was a name, like there were a bunch of one-shots, obviously. So it was the name of a short comic series. So I was okay with it, especially because I was under the impression that we were going to be getting a bunch of X-Men Origins films.
Yeah, like this would be almost its own franchise. That was the idea I had, and of course, when this was first pitched, it wasn't long after that we heard that they were talking about doing X-Men Origins Magneto. So it was like, oh, okay, well, this makes sense if there's a series of these. As it stands now, it's a pretty silly title, because there's not any more of them.
Yeah. Like I said, if they went ahead with X-Men Origins Magneto, and, I'm not sure if they had plans, but there was talk of doing Origins films for other X-Men characters, and a lot of the actors from the trilogy wanted to do them. They just never went ahead with that. So talking about the X-Men film titles is funny because they're not consistent at all.
Not even kind of.
Yeah.
And now they keep talking about other X-Men films with some of the original cast post Days of Future Past, like still saying X4 and X5, and I'm like, well, that's silly, because once you have Days of Future Past, that sort of is X-Men 4.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I expect we'll get a whole lot of stuff that's, could be X-Men 4 related, and also with the Wolverine, because that takes place after X-Men 3 as well.
That's right, yeah. Well, and considering the fact that all of the films, besides First Class, have kind of been Wolverine-centric, you could have almost called that X-Men 4. I'm just
exactly.
kidding. So, we should talk a little bit about what's going on the screen. I was so jazzed in the theater, that they took some stuff right out of Origin at the beginning of this, and was immediately a little bit disappointed. Again, I still liked the film the first time around, but was immediately a little bit disappointed when I found out that all the Origin stuff was just going to be in the teaser of the film.
Yeah. It's funny because as an Australian, this film was made in Australia, and everybody you see in this scene is an Australian actor, and some of them are very well-known Australian actors in television and such. Yeah, so I was like, oh wow, he's in this too, and as time goes on, there's more actors like that, and yeah, but from a comic book fan standpoint, I was pretty happy to see a bunch of Origin stuff in here, and I like the kid playing young Logan as well.
I did too.
Yeah, he has some good facials. The way he kind of looks at someone with his head tilted down, like, just past his eyebrows, the way he looks up is very Hugh Jackman-esque. So I thought that was really cool.
Now, I don't know how you feel about Origin. I know some people don't really care for it. I've always really liked it. If for me, and I don't know if you'll agree with this, I almost wish that this had just been the film.
Yeah. There are things I like about Origin. There are some things I don't love. I'm not a huge fan of the Bone Claws.
Yeah, fair enough. And again, I like the Bone Claws for the sake of that story. I think it gets problematic with a lot of other things.
Yeah, I'm just kind of disappointed that. And yeah, I guess I like it more in the comic, but in the film, I don't know. It's kind of weird that that's one of his powers, that he has claws as well. It's just kind of random to me. It doesn't make sense with the rest of his powers.
Well, and it also seems kind of contrived, right? Where it's like, the only. By the way, I do like a lot of the soundtrack in this film.
Me too. Yeah.
The only way that you could have claws come out and retract all the time like that would be if you had a healing factor. So I mean, like, I always liked the idea that Weapon X just took advantage of that rather than that was built into his chemical makeup.
Yeah.
I guess it kind of makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint, where it's like, I guess it would sort of make sense that a creature would have a healing factor that had claws that retracted like that, although, in nature, there's such a thing as retractable claws, and they don't go through your skin, so...
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, I hadn't thought of it like that.
So, I like the idea of Logan being in all these different wars, though I wish they had built in a much, more of a reason for him character-wise as to why he's fighting in all these different wars, because, just why? Who's he fighting for?
Yeah, they make a note later of saying, of doing the whole "I'm Canadian" thing, and it's like, you were fighting in this war.
Yeah, you were fighting for America constantly.
Yeah.
And I always like to make the note that the film, the origin stuff, takes place before Canada existed.
Yes, yeah, that's very true.
So they say it's the Canadian territories, but there was no such thing as the Canadian territories at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
1830 something or whatever it is, I forget. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
1845, yeah, there was no Canada yet. In fact, I'm going to look this up, Shades. We're going to find out when the Canadian territories were formed.
While doing that, I will say,
yes.
I do love this whole sequence. I wish it was, more than just an opening title sequence, but I do love how all this is shot, and the freezing when the names come up. I really like this whole sequence. It's really well done.
Yeah, I think so too. And I like telling a mini story in credit sequences.
Yeah.
We got that with Watchmen. I always really loved that. We get that in some of these action movies, and we're already learning a lot about Wolverine and Sabretooth's past just just while watching the credits. That's kind of nice.
Yeah, it was funny because it was like 3 comic book movies in a row that did it, because we had Incredible Hulk, then Watchmen, and then this. And yeah, I found that interesting, but yeah, I do like this, and I forgot that Richard Donner was a producer on this.
Well, has he been a producer on all of them?
He produced X-Men 1, and
right.
His wife is the producer of all of them.
Right.
Or Shula Donner, but...
Huh. Well, that's weird that his name's on this one.
Yeah, it's funny that he chose to do this one, because Hugh Jackman is also a producer on this.
Well, I doubt that he did much of anything.
Hugh Jackman?
No, not Hugh Jackman. I'm just saying I doubt Richard Donner really did much of anything.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure he just kind of gave his money to the project.
Yeah. Wow, really? Really there, Sabretooth? You're that badass, you've just got excuse my French, you just got a rat running around on you, and you're just cool with it? That's great.
Well, there it's just like, oh, this is my friend Rat. You know, he's all like patting it and stuff.
I want that action figure. I want the Sabretooth action figure that comes with a rat that just sits on his shoulder. By the way, Canadian territory is 1867.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah, 67.
There you go. I like, in X-Men 2, they released an action figure of Wolverine with that wolf that he finds at Alkali Lake at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just like, oh, wow, that was, an integral character to give an action figure to. That one wolf.
Well, at least it wasn't packaged by itself.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Wouldn't that be a great action figure? The wolf hanging out with... That would be the Star Wars way of doing X-Men action figures. So there's Wade Wilson with his katana, obviously setting up stuff for Deadpool fans just to make them all very disappointed by the end.
Yeah. I gotta say, I think the reason I like this film is because I think the casting is fantastic. Generally speaking. But I really love Liev Schreiber as Sabretooth and Danny Houston.
Great.
Yeah, Danny Houston as Stryker, Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. There's a lot of really great casting, I thought, in this.
So, a lot of the reason that as much as I don't care for the direction this film went, and that it's just not a very thoughtful film, and of course we'll get to all the goofy stuff by the third act, of course, a lot of the reason that it doesn't bother me as much as the really not well thought out stuff from X-Men 3 bothered me is because I didn't need this movie to be great, because I feel like we already knew everything we needed to know about Wolverine's background. I feel like this film in a lot of ways is kind of superfluous.
Yeah, this film didn't really need to be made, and it's funny because the argument was Hugh Jackman wanted to make the Japanese saga, which they're going to be doing now, but
now, right?
Yeah, and but the argument from whoever it was, like the producers or Fox or whoever it came from, was that this story needs to be told first, since they teased so much of it in X1 and 2. Which I understand, but I don't think it needed to be fleshed out. I think that's where they're wrong. I don't think it was necessary.
Well, I think the film itself is proof of that. Now, I think this film could have been also made a great deal better, but I think that the focus is in the wrong place. A lot of the problem with this is that there's all this talk about Wolverine being an animal and being very feral, and we never see that.
Yeah.
I never feel that. I'm not enough in his head, and I like this doesn't even come close to doing what what am I think? Why can't I think of it right now? What Weapon X did for Wolverine? The graphic novel, which doesn't have a great deal of story in it. It's much more about just putting us in his head and making us feel what he feels going through it.
Yeah, it's weird because there's all this, like you said, there's all this talk of him being an animal, and Wolverine kind of kills less people here than he did in the trilogy.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, like when we did the X3 commentary, I was talking about how he just goes to Magneto's camp and he just kills all those guys pointlessly. And here, there's that scene later with Team Weapon X where they're in wherever they are. Well, they're in Africa, and he stops Victor from killing that guy, and it's like, yeah, you're not an animal. You're the tamest guy there.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
He doesn't scare me in this movie, and he needs to. And they don't even... The problem is, it's not that they try it and it fails, it's that they don't even try it.
Yeah, I remember when I saw the trailer, I remember thinking, oh man, he's going to be insanely, feral Wolverine, like when they... Because one of the big things in the trailer was him jumping out of the tank. I remember thinking, oh man, he looks so intense. And that's kind of the only time we see him being, like, super angry.
And just like we saw with Elektra, and yeah, I'm going to compare this to that movie, there are all of these changes just for the sake of change, not because there were better ideas or ideas that work better for this medium. And like I always say, I'm not a purist. You can change source material, but you've got to convince me. You've got to, and even if I didn't know the source material, I would still have huge problems with things like really, he knows that Wolverine's going to lose his memory if he shoots him in the head with a bullet. Okay, that's not bad because it's different from the source material. That's bad because it's bad.
Yeah, it's change for the sake of change, and it's not better than what's done in the source material, so why bother?
So why not just leave it like it was? And I think a lot of people make the same case for what's done with Deadpool. At least his character before he is made into Weapon 11 is pretty consistent with the comics. I think part of the reason the Deadpool fans were so disappointed with what was done with Wade Wilson in this is because he got so close and then he was so far away.
Yeah, he is, I'm not a huge Deadpool fan, and I don't really like what's been done with the character in recent time, but I will say, from what I know about Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds, is 100% Deadpool in DC.
And I don't care for Ryan Reynolds that much as an actor usually. I didn't like him as Green Lantern, but he's the right guy for this.
Yeah, I do like Ryan Reynolds. I've seen him in some stuff where I'm like, man, you're a good actor. And he doesn't always get those opportunities. I liked him fine as Green Lantern, but I mean, that's another story.
That's just me.
No. I mean, you're not alone in saying that. That's the thing. So, I'm not a huge Green Lantern fan, but yeah, it's funny. I always thought he was really great as Deadpool, and when David Goyer was originally attached to Deadpool, when Deadpool was being owned by New Line Cinemas, when he was doing Blade 3, he said, "I'm the perfect guy to play Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds," and then he gets Deadpool in Blade 3. But
that's right.
So he got to keep. I'm glad he got to the role because I know he is a fan, but yeah. Yeah, here's that scene.
What's that?
Here's that scene where it's just like, no, don't kill anyone.
Yeah, he's so terrifying and animalistic. I don't get it. Again, I just don't feel like this was a story that needed to be told, so you have to almost sell it harder. When you get when you're watching X2 and you've got all the stuff with him and Stryker, that's not all just background. We're told what we need to be told about his character, and nothing is added to it here, especially because the film ends with the amnesia. And so it's just, I don't know, I just feel like it's very pointless.
I mean, also one of the most important lines in X-Men 2 that Stryker says to Wolverine is, if you knew what kind of person you were.
Yeah, that's right.
and he, and I'm okay with it being the same person, but is the exact same person. Like, he talks about, if you knew what kind of person you were in the work we did together, people don't change. You're an animal then, you're an animal now. I just gave you claws. Like, that's his line. And I don't know, he basically is the exact same guy.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you're right. A lot of the problem is that he's too familiar here.
Yeah. They were originally going to have a young Storm in this scene.
Really?
Yeah, and they shot the scene, and that's why there was I think a lightning bolt at the end of that.
Weird.
And yeah, I mean the scene's on the DVD, and she even made it in the trailer. Young Storm.
Wow, I haven't seen that.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's funny. Storm was gonna have a cameo in this, and young Storm also had a cameo in Cerebro in First Class. That's kind of funny to me.
Yeah, that is funny. She's everywhere.
Yeah.
I guess that means this is the 60s.
Yeah.
But I kind of got the sense that this was not the 60s, that this was a little later than that.
Yeah, 70s.
So I made a point when I reviewed this that I think I was maybe a little bit wrong about, and that was that Wolverine in this shouldn't have volunteered for the project, that we would have cared much more about him if he had been forced into it. And, of course, thinking back on it, that's not consistent with X2, but I think the point still stands a bit, just in that he does kind of go with it for really silly and contrived and easy reasons, with the extremely convoluted plot that starts right here with this woman that he's dating.
Yeah. We don't get to know Silver Fox at all before she's fake killed. I mean, she's just the guy that's dating Wolverine. We don't really get to know a whole lot about if they're considering getting married or how in love they are or anything. It's just she's dating with Wolverine and she gets killed. That's all.
And by the time she comes out and tells us that she's just well, by the time we see her still alive and it turns out to be a fake death, it's like, oh, this has completely degenerated into a soap opera, hasn't it?
Yeah, and by the time she actually dies, I care about her even less because she lied in this whole time. Yeah,
and they have very flaky, contrived reasons for trying to for having her do that and trying to make us still care about her. You got a movie here with Wolverine in the title, and by the time I get to this scene, I'm like, where's Wolverine? I mean, yeah, I'm not saying we haven't seen him very much yet, but we keep jumping to all these other characters, and it's like, oh, really? So, because your title, so you made a title with X-Men in it so that you could have a bunch of random characters with powers in this, because you were afraid that Wolverine couldn't carry a movie on his own, which is really goofy, because all the other movies up to this point have been primarily about Wolverine.
Yeah. It's funny. I like Dominic Monaghan.
I like him too. Yeah. Again, the casting is all really good in this, but there's too many characters. It's Spider-Man 3 all over again.
Yeah. It's funny when you think of it like that. I hadn't thought of it like that. It's kind of like Spider-Man 3 with all these useless characters. And X-Men have sort of followed that trend since X-Men 3. There's a bunch of characters who don't really need to be there.
Although First Class certainly handles it a lot better. And those characters kind of did need to be there because you really did need some X-Men on a team, regardless of you like who they picked.
Yeah, I mean, I would have chosen different characters. And once again, I think, we'll get to this when we do First Class, but once again, there's a bunch of villains in the movie that we don't really get names of, and they're just kind of there to fight people.
That's true, and that's problematic, but that goes back to X1.
No, exactly, yeah. I mean, X-Men 2 got away from that. X-Men 3 went back to it. We go back to it again here, and First Class has it again. It's Yeah.
But at least First Class was cohesive and had, at least I think, and was paced well. This film is all over the place.
Yeah, it's funny. I think you hear a lot of with the people who make the X-Men films. You hear them talk about, we want to get all these cool mutants in there, which I understand. And if I was writing an X-Men movie, I know that there's a bunch of characters that I'd love to allude to and have cameos of as well, but it takes away from the story. I don't need to spend time with some of the characters that we spend time with here. Like, it's basically, Wolverine finds a friend, teams up for him for a little while, gets killed, moves on.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And while we're telling that story, we've got to jump to all these other people just because fans have heard of them and will point at the screen and go, oh, hey, I know who that is.
Yeah. Lynn Collins, who plays Silver Fox in this movie, she's been played Wonder Woman.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah. I think people liked her in John. I didn't see that, but
yeah, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that either. I keep meaning to.
Yeah.
Shades, I'm finding myself just digging for things to talk about with this film. I'm already bored.
Funny, there's a lot of tangent. There's kind of a lot of stuff. It's weird. Like, we're nearly half an hour into the film. We're 24 minutes into the film. A bunch has happened. At the same time, a bunch hasn't happened. It's weird. Like, we had all this stuff happen in the first 5 minutes and then during the title sequence. And since then, it's just kind of been a bunch of people on screen.
Yeah, we don't yet know what the big overarching plot is. So, you're right. We've seen a lot of action on screen, but we don't know what the stakes are yet. We don't have an investment in anybody yet.
Yeah. Hugh Jackman is very funny. He gets out of Wolverine really well.
Yeah, I think he does too. I do get the vibe from him this whole movie that he's not making the movie he wants to make.
Yeah, I've heard about this film and say that he was proud of it. I mean, this is the first film that he produced and really had a lot of stake in. So that's the thing. He had a lot of stake in this film. And I know he wanted it to be successful, and he's such a big fan of Wolverine that, no actor wants to make a bad film, but Hugh had a lot writing on this.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that he gets the film that he wants to make now with the Wolverine. So I'm really looking forward to that, because I know, that he's been wanting to make that since X-Men 2.
Yeah, and fair enough. It's a great story.
Yeah.
Of course, we're getting closer and closer to putting everything Frank Miller ever wrote on screen.
Lots of his stories all over the place now, aren't we?
Yep. Pretty soon we're going to have to resort to the ones he wrote when he was crazy.
Coming soon, All-Star Batman.
Oh, no, don't say that.
That's a really famous Australian actor there, the little boy. It's funny seeing all these familiar faces all over the place in this big Hollywood movie.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because of course, I wouldn't know. Well, there's the token line, right? I'm the best at what I do.
Yeah. I remember when I first saw that, there were people in the audience who went, "Yay!" when he said that. I think people have been waiting for him to say that for a long time.
Yeah, and it's cool he said that. Although, again, it could have been in a cooler place. I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess he says it very matter-of-factly, but in some ways, how else do you say it? it might feel a little contrived if it just says to a villain, "I'm the best there is at what I do." Like,
what I do isn't very nice. Yeah, but this is not a film without one-liners either, Shades.
Yeah, but the thing I kind of like about it is that it's just kind of stating it like it's fact. Like, I'm the best there is at what I do.
That's
I kind of find that.
I don't suppose it's too convenient of a place. You're right. So yeah, Silver Fox is a character that I don't know all that well. She hasn't popped up in enough stuff that I've read. So when I first saw this, I didn't know who she was, and I did that thing I often do with X-Men movies where I went, you know what? I bet that's a character I'm supposed to know.
Yeah, when this film was being made, I didn't know a whole lot about Wolverine's origin. Like, everything Wolverine I'd read was pretty much X-Men. I hadn't gone back and read a lot of Wolverine solo stuff as it was.
Yeah, so, and I haven't either. And I have a bunch of it, but I've not sat down and read much of it.
Yeah, I mean, even now, there's still a lot that I haven't read. Because, Wolverine, there's a lot of Wolverine origin stuff that gets a little convoluted at times. But,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, Silver Fox is a Native American character. Which is clearly not the fact in this film, but...
Yeah, that's true. And it's kind of funny because, she has this story that seems pretty Native American, and she's got a lot of decor that looks kind of Native American.
Yeah, they make a whole lot of alludes to it, but she's very visibly not Native American.
Yeah, it's too bad they couldn't get somebody that was.
Yeah, I mean, I like points in this, what little there is. And I feel like the script could have done a better job at making her, I guess, more of a spiritual person or something. I don't know. She seems like a normal person who's a school teacher, and she has all these stories and stuff.
Right, they don't really fit together. You're just like, they come out of nowhere. It's like, well, you're a little normal to be talking like this.
I do like Kukachu got screwed. That's
I like
funny
that too.
one.
Yeah, he's kind of charming in places, but overall, I think compared to what Wolverine is in the first two movies, he's a little generic in his own film.
Interesting. I haven't felt that before. I guess you're right. I mean, Jackman is just gold as Wolverine. And
I just don't think the script is as good as he is. Is all I'm saying.
I'd agree to that. Yeah. And it's funny because there's a lot of people in this, and I've said this about other X-Men films, that there's some really good acting and some really good casting choices, and some actors get the characters better than the script does, all throughout the X-Men films, and I think this is another example. Like, I think Shiva is just fantastic as Sabretooth, and like I said earlier, Danny Huston really gets Stryker, but the script is, the script is just very, I don't know. I don't know.
I honestly, I think it's just bland. I don't think it's, I just don't think it's smart enough. I mean, is the best way to put it. I don't know. I'm just sitting here watching this. I'm having a difficult time coming up with interesting things to say.
I mean, we're about to have, a very famous scene. Well, not scene, but a very famous event from Wolverine's past about to happen.
Right.
And it's coming out of nowhere.
Referring to Weapon X or referring to what?
Referring to Silver Fox's death.
Okay, right.
Sabretooth does some horrible things to her in the comics. But, obviously her death is not,
doesn't actually happen.
Yeah, I think she does fake her death in the comics. Once again, it's been a long time since I've read a lot of Wolverine origin stuff, so people who are more well-versed in Wolverine can feel free to correct me. But
well, the question is, are people who are more well-versed than us in Wolverine people that actually really like this movie? Because I'm not sure that they are.
That's true.
And I think that it's interesting because, you talked about how convoluted a lot of Wolverine's origin is in the comics, and it is, and then we're complaining about a movie that's really convoluted too. But that's not to say that it's, real faithful to the source material, or that just because it's convoluted in the comics doesn't make it, doesn't mean that we should give the movie a pass because the story doesn't really work.
Yeah. Something that bothers me about this, is that Wolverine has, great senses and a great sense of smell, and later we see that Sabretooth just poured, like, a bucket of blood onto her, or poured a bag of blood onto her. I feel like he should be able to, he smells people.
Yeah, it's a bag of blood.
She filled up a bag of her own blood, but, he should be able to smell that she doesn't have any wounds on her or anything. That kind of stuff, it bothers me because it's not consistent with Wolverine. And, a lot of the films aren't consistent with Wolverine's powers, but that's a firm example.
Well, I agree with you. I think that is silly, especially because it's such an extreme case where it's like, it's a bunch of blood. You should be able to smell that.
Yeah. I mean, like I was saying in the X-Men 2 commentary, I didn't like how it was just cool to make out with Jean when it was actually Mystique. He should know.
Right.
But he should be able to smell the fact that his girlfriend is in fact has no mortal wound, has no wounds, and like whose blood is all over her. So
Wolverine gets in fights in a lot of really run-down looking bars.
Yes, he does. I mean, Wolverine likes beer, so
One of the questions I wrote in my trivia book, maybe I should open that up and look at that. One of the questions I wrote in my trivia book was, how many times do these two run at each other in this film?
I'm going to say about 3 or 4.
It's at least 3. I was in the theater chuckling at that. Because every time they see each other on screen, from this point on, they will run at each other from a great distance, and then jump at each other in slow motion.
Yeah, the one that really...
It gets hilarious.
Yeah. The one that really pushes it for me is the one in the alley where he meets Gambit, because they seem to be standing like, just meters apart.
And then suddenly they're far away again.
I will say, this movie has some really great fight scenes with Wolverine and Sabretooth.
Yeah, I think the production values are mostly good. I've heard some people complain about some of the visual effects, but most of it worked okay for me.
I take issue with some of the visual effects, and I'll point out when they're bothersome to me later. But these fight sequences, I think, are really well done, and I don't know, it feels like Sabretooth and Wolverine. I will say that. It really feels like fights that they would have in the comics.
I just remembered something, Shades. There's a flashback, I want to say it's in X-Men 2, where, because we see little tiny snippets of Weapon X throughout, and one of them that we see in X2 is when he gets up from being in Weapon X and looks at his claws, and of course freaks out. And it seems like he would be less likely to react the way he did if he had claws in the first place, even if they were suddenly metallic.
Exactly. Yeah. Would
you agree with that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in X-Men 2, we see him, like, running, just, bloody and screaming into the air and just looking at his claws in horror. Like, first time I saw X-Men 2, that part just freaked me out, and in this, like, he looks at his claws for a second and he's just kind of satisfied, and then he, jumps into a waterfall.
Wouldn't it have made more sense, of course, if he had, lost his memories like he was supposed to, because he will have no memories. He will have no memories. And then, even if he had the bone claws originally, that still would have made sense because he doesn't have any memory of anything. So he's freaking out because he looks like a monster and he's got claws.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You could have made it work even with the bone claw, Shades.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they could have made it work. And there's been a picture released from the Wolverine of him with bone claws.
Oh, so they're gonna do flashbacks then?
So, I guess so. Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if they're going to try and make an attempt at fixing something, or I don't know. I know there's a lot of talk about this being a very standalone film, the Wolverine. But
Yeah, great.
yeah, we'll see.
Well,
I'm very excited for that film. I think
me
that
too, man. Yeah, I
priorities
can't wait.
that.
And that right there was one of the most cliched lines you ever get from a villain ever. And then we shall have our revenge. This is the place where the film starts really losing me, and I'm already kind of complaining about the pacing problems because we keep jumping to all these different characters, and I just want to see Wolverine because it's Wolverine's movie. But like you're already getting the sense that if you, I mean, again, I'm saying this in hindsight, yeah, you know, knowing what's going to happen in the rest of the film, but also having known something about Wolverine's background before I saw the film, you're already getting the sense that there's going to be a grand conspiracy that manipulates him into getting into the Weapon X program, and that's just not interesting. That's the easy out. It's plot driven. It's not character driven.
I also don't know why he trusts Stryker.
No, he has every reason not to, and he doesn't like him, and he's done nothing but untrustworthy things to him prior to this.
Yeah, and just that whole scene where it's like, you know, you will have your revenge. Is the way. I'm not knocking Danny Houston for his performance, but just the way he delivers it, it's like, yeah, I wouldn't trust that guy as far as I could throw him.
No, I wouldn't either, because clearly he's got an ulterior motive. I mean, this guy has another reason for this, and we're supposed to buy this blind rage that Wolverine has. It's supposed to be, well, Wolverine probably, if he was thinking straight, would, Logan, if he was thinking straight, he'd probably be like, oh yeah, I shouldn't listen to this guy. He's got his own reasons for doing this. He's not doing this to help me. But we're supposed to buy that he's got tunnel vision now because Silver Fox died. Well, Shades, I didn't see them together enough. The screen time they had together I thought was pretty typical. I mean, if nothing else, I'm just not emotionally invested in this person.
Yeah, and you know what? It would have been so much better if, by the way, his dog tags are completely different to what's in X-Men 1 and 2. That bothers me. Yeah, they had to do that, right? But something that I feel like it would have been so much better if Sabretooth had taken Wolverine out, and, you know, he steps on his claws or whatever, and then he takes him to Stryker. And then they start performing this procedure on him without his permission and, you know, without his consent. The way he just agrees to it, it bothers me.
But again, you still did kind of get the sense from X2 that it was voluntary.
Oh, no, that's true. But, no, yeah, you're right. Never mind.
No. I'm just saying, the thing is, what you just said is what I said when I reviewed it. For the sake of this film, that would have made a great deal more sense. But the problem is, they're doing that because they're trying to make that work. And, you know, I guess I sort of appreciate, regardless of all of the other mistakes they make continuity-wise, I guess I sort of appreciate that attempt at following continuity, except that it's one of the big character problems with the film. It's not consistent with who he is, and more importantly, it makes him less sympathetic, because he's an idiot.
Yeah.
And you never want your main character, you never want your main character as an idiot to be a plot point.
Yeah. Exactly. You kind of look at him and go, why are you doing this? Like, you should know better than this. I will say, I kind of like this sequence, though. Like, not looking at the rest of the film, I think this is just kind of cool. I like seeing the Weapon X procedure done on screen. I think that's cool.
I think it's cool, too. And maybe I'm being a jerk by saying this, but I don't think it's all that impressive that they were able to get that right. I just don't think that's hard, that hard to do.
No, that's true. Like I sort of was saying earlier, I dislike how it looks different to what's done or what's flashed back to in X-Men 1 and 2. I dislike the fact that he's not running bloody, screaming and stuff like that, but they decided to make this film a lot more PG. They didn't want Wolverine to be the best there is at what he does, essentially.
Even though ironically he says that.
Yeah, he says it without showing it, and part of that is because, this movie was going to sell a lot of toys, and kids love Wolverine. So I don't blame them for, making it something that, parents could take their kids to, but I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what I expected, but I don't necessarily like what they did instead.
Well, what I expected was not to have these really goofy, I think goofy, like motivations for why things happen that happen in the comics, but not for the reasons that they did. So, like, he doesn't freak out because he's there. He freaks out because he's got super hearing and he overhears Stryker say that he's going to erase his memory. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly.
I just think that's super goofy.
And they had the perfect opportunity to do something with erasing his memory because of his obsession with Cerebro in X-Men 2. They really had an opportunity to do something kind of like that. And there's a deleted scene where he starts to erase his memory later in the film. And I'll tell you when it happens, where it was supposed to be.
Oh, wow, really? Okay.
Yeah. And, because he finds out that Kayla is still alive, and he's like, Stryker says, I can make all this go away. And, which would have been dumb, but, well, the thing is, he doesn't go through with it because he hears Kayla scream when Sabretooth nearly chokes her to death. But at least they could have done something with them erasing his memory, something to do with Cerebro, and that's where his obsession comes from. But they didn't do that. So.
You know what's really funny is right before he leaves and jumps in the waterfall, he gets shot in the head by Agent Zero, and all he had to do was shoot him with an adamantium bullet, and the movie would have been over.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that's sadly prophetic.
Yeah, I'll say this real quick as well, because I've heard people complain that Wolverine gets shot in the head in X-Men 2, and he's, essentially dead for a couple of minutes, and Mary gets shot in the head happens. I will defend this movie by saying he was kind of in a berserker rage there. So I could imagine with his adrenaline pumping,
his healing factors
he could have
double time.
Yeah.
Hey, Shades, you know what happens here, right? You got this elderly couple that's driving down the street, and all of a sudden, a spaceship oh, wait.
Somebody say...
Wow, that's not the age of a naked kid that we expected to see in our field.
I'm just running across Australia.
I just like that guy's reaction when his wife says there's a naked man in the barn, and he just goes, "Yep."
Yeah. Once again, a really great actor here, and I've seen him in theatre in Australia, and when he was, I was like, oh my gosh, they just got everybody to be in this film, didn't they?
Well, I guess it would. I guess from your perspective, it's just automatically a more fun movie because you're recognizing all these people.
Yeah. I guess I have a unique perspective in that case, but also something that's really funny to me. I'm not sure if anyone notices this, or if this is even a mistake. I might be wrong. But earlier, when the elderly couple were driving up the road, they're of course driving on the right side of the road, as one does in America, but in Australia, we drive on the left side of the road, and you actually saw an arrow on the left side of the road pointing in the direction that they were driving. I just thought that was pretty funny. I really thought someone would have noticed that, but
yeah, that's not right.
Yeah, unless that was a one-way 2-lane road. But
right
now these claws are incredibly noticeably CG.
Oh yeah, they look awful. Wow, I've never really looked at.
I don't know why.
Why like, CG?
I would have thought.
Whoa, that looks horrible.
Exactly.
Shades.
It's not like. Yeah. Exactly. It's not like they needed to be CG because they were going to be close to someone's face in a fight scene. This is Hugh Jackman.
Yeah. It's a close up. I mean, there's insert shots.
Exactly. You know, I don't get why they're CG. Yeah, that really bothered me.
I practically am expecting them to, at this point, to sprout a mouth and start singing Frank Sinatra.
I do like the notion of Wolverine slicing a sink just perfectly in half. That makes me laugh.
Yeah, and these older folks have no idea what's going on. They're just not even questioning anything because they're just like, we don't even want to know how this guy is slicing up everything. And
yeah,
I gotta tell you, all of this is just so super disappointing. That like we've already gotten past Weapon X, which is kind of the reason to go see this movie. We're already past that scene, and he's just regular Wolverine again.
yeah, exactly. Like in the comics, the Hudsons take Wolverine in after they find him after the Weapon X procedure, but they're not an elderly couple. One of them's the Vindicator, a superpowered person.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I get why it's an elderly couple, and to be honest, when they get shot by Maverick, I do kind of feel really sad because they were these nice, innocent people that were doing a kindness for.
I'm with you. The sad thing is, they're some of the only characters in the whole movie that I even half care about. I mean, I'm not saying that I don't like them. I'm just saying that again, the pacing is really wonky. You wanted to spend more time, or at least I did, wanted to spend a little more time with the Weapon X procedure, and you wanted to really feel it and see what he went through. I feel like he's gone through this horrible ordeal. He's already kind of okay.
Yeah. And I feel like
we needed to spend longer on that. That needed to take more time.
Yeah, this scene, it feels like to me this should be happening after maybe a couple of weeks after staying with them.
Precisely. Yeah.
I mean, I do like this scene. The way the guy says "bull," you know what?
Right.
Makes me laugh. But X-Men Origins jacket.
No, they should have a whole film about that. They should have a whole film called X-Men Origins Wolverine's jacket.
Now, this is a different jacket to what's in X-Men 1. I don't think it was intended to be, this is the jacket that he has for the rest of his life. I think what was more intended was, now we have Wolverine the way we know him to look with a leather jacket.
Okay, maybe that is the idea. I just felt like the way the scene played, they were making such a big deal out of it that we were supposed to think it was the same jacket.
Yeah. The way he kind of says, this was my son's, and, it might fit you.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Shades, enough of us thought that they certainly, if they didn't intend that, they messed up.
Oh, no, exactly, yeah. I mean, I thought that originally as well. But I've just tried to, trying to be less harsh on the film, I drew that conclusion. But, yeah.
Well, like you said, considering it is a different jacket, but then it's a little bizarre that since he doesn't have his memory anymore when he gets that other jacket, that he just happens to get one that looks so similar. That's kind of silly.
Yeah, I mean, he does leave his jacket in Gambit's
Yeah, he doesn't even take it with him.
Plane. Yeah, I'll go my own way without my jacket.
Without my jacket.
Yeah.
Shades, there is way too much CGI in this movie.
Yeah, I don't get why Maverick is so good at jumping everywhere. Like,
Maybe that's his mutant power.
I guess, yeah. Like he did that random leap earlier in the film where it's just shooting people and doing a backflip, just shooting everybody in sight. And I'm like, wow, I didn't.
The thing that I really, the biggest thing that I hate about this movie, and what it all comes down to for me, is that all of these plot contrivances, again, it being so plot driven, where people just do things to do what the script wants them to. And the worst thing is that it's to do things that they feel like have to be in there because it was kind of what it was in the comics. They dumb down everybody and make all my favorite characters morons. Keep in mind that Stryker is my favorite X-Men villain from the movies, bar none. Yeah, absolute favorite. And they make him such a complete idiot in this movie. Now maybe the idea is that he's a moron in his youth and he grows up and he's smarter. But man, I don't like it. I don't like that he's dumb enough to get Wolverine to get in the Weapon X program, say what he said, not understanding his powers well enough, because after all, he's worked with him enough, he ought to know he's got good hearing, right? So he just comes out and says, we're gonna make him lose his memory. It's his fault all this is going on, and now they've gotta go chase him down and try to kill him. I mean, there's a whole lot of work on his part for nothing if he just wasn't a moron. The other thing I don't like is that he makes Wolverine basically into a weapon just to build a bigger weapon with Weapon 11.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that comic book? Because I don't think that's comic book.
I don't think that's comic book either. Not at all. Well, to be fair, Stryker's not the guy who, is behind Weapon X in comics.
Right, and I understand that. It's a change that I actually like. Just because he was so great in X2. But I'm just saying that the idea of we have Weapon X just to immediately go to Weapon 11?
Yeah, that's weird to me. I don't know. I'm not sure if there is a Weapon 11 in the comics or not. It's certainly not Deadpool.
No, it's not. But the thing that makes it ridiculous is that it seems like, okay, he's kind of building an army, so I get that, but it seems like more to the point what he's doing is just getting different mutants to build a pool of powers, thus this guy's name is Deadpool, and then we've got this unstoppable killing machine in our command. Okay, if that's what you're doing, why did you have to take the risk of giving a guy that doesn't trust you and that probably will kill you at his first possible chance all of this power, turning him into Weapon X? Why not just take his DNA and kill him?
Yeah, and later there's that other general who says he spent $500,000 making him indestructible.
Why?
Yeah, you did. Exactly. Why?
He says, well, we'll use his DNA and we'll use it on Weapon 11 and we're going to wipe his memory. And again, I guess the idea is that they're still going to use him also, but that's risky.
Yeah.
That's too risky.
I mean, yeah, yeah, you're right. It's a very poor plan.
It's dumbed down for a popcorn-eating audience. We're not supposed to think. We're supposed to enjoy all the explosions and say, oh, this is fun because now we get to learn about Wolverine when he was younger.
Yeah. And I think, they also try to please, and, that's the problem. It's a popcorn flick for people who aren't fans, and then they try and please the fans by putting in all these other X-Men characters. There's no reason for Cyclops or Emma Frost to be in this film.
Shades, I don't like to make blanket
and
statements.
They're there.
I don't like to make blanket statements, but this is one that I will always make and stand by, and that is, if you put story first, everything else will follow.
Yeah.
And cool people don't look at explosions. I hate that. I hate that shot. It's ridiculous.
I'm okay with it, but it is a very stereotypical Hollywood, walking away, slow motion, explosion behind you.
It's that kind of movie.
Yeah.
And what I said about story, that's not to say that you can't have a really fun action movie. Okay, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that like this could be a really fun action movie where there's a great deal of action, but and maybe somewhat of an emphasis on action, but the story doesn't make sense because they don't care about telling a story. They're just trying to put all the pieces in place to get
Yeah.
him where they think he's supposed to go. It's frustrating.
Yeah, I agree.
It's frustrating. If you start thinking about it at all, the whole thing breaks down.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And they set up the adamantium gun to pay it off later, and I'm already going, what? An adamantium gun? You think you can shoot adamantium with adamantium? All right.
Yeah, it's meant to be indestructible, yet it can penetrate itself. That doesn't make any sense. In that case, Wolverine should be able to like cut off his arm. There's then a clean slice. That doesn't make any sense.
We talked over Cyclops there. Of course, you being Shades, you probably want to mention something about that. I was going to ask you this question. Isn't it, once again, I'm questioning the logic of a lot of stuff in this film. So, he's got to wear those glasses so that he doesn't accidentally shoot people with his eye beams, right?
Yep.
So wouldn't he be wearing those all the time?
Well, at the moment, and this is what I presumed that they were doing, was that in the comics, when he gets headaches, he puts them on.
So he's not always wearing them.
No, because he's meant to be a young Scott, so he puts them on when he has headaches. That's what a doctor gave him. Actually, I think it's what Sinister gave him, sorry.
Wow.
Sinister was a doctor. When you have headaches, it's a problem with your eyes and your vision. So put these on and, you'll be fine. So he's wearing them because he has a headache. And so I like that they got that part right.
Yeah,
Everything else, Cyclops sucks.
Yeah, not knowing that, it just felt kind of contrived to me. I was sort of like, wow, why is this the first time his teacher seems to be making a big deal out of him wearing sunglasses in class? Okay.
Well, also later when you see him working on the chalkboard, it's like a profile shot, so you can clearly see his eyes. And then later when Sabretooth attacks him, his power just goes off. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I will say this: they get the thing that I hate that people get wrong about. It has vision. Hey man, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I didn't hear the last thing you said though.
They give him heat vision.
Okay, what do you mean?
He doesn't have heat vision.
What do you mean he doesn't have heat vision?
His power isn't heat. It's an optic blast. It's a force. It's not heat.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean. I didn't remember what the effect looked like, so.
Yeah, you'll see later, like, the house is so the school is, on fire where he blasted it. They give him heat vision. That's the thing that I hate that people get wrong about Cyclops. And they did it in a film. And in a film where, in the first three films, it's very clearly not heat vision. So give him a different power.
I didn't even notice that.
It's as a Cyclops fan, I'm just like, oh.
So this guy playing Blob, Kevin Durant, I've seen him in a lot of things, and I was so surprised that he was willing to put on all this makeup for this role.
Yeah, he's a good actor. He's a very funny actor. He was in Real Steel with Hugh Jackman last year.
I didn't know he was in that. That's great.
Yeah. He's hilarious in that. But I love him as Blob. He's another one of those actors that really got the character. And yeah, I think the suit looks really great.
Yeah, I think it looks good too. I know some people don't like it. I thought it was fine.
Yeah, I don't agree with people who say they should have got an actual, just really overweight guy, because he still needs to be somewhat of an athletic mutant. So,
Yeah, and you want him to be played by a good actor.
yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that there's not big overweight guys that could necessarily play the role, but I mean, like, I don't know. I'm just saying that if you find the actor you want for it, I think it's okay to put makeup on him and make it work.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of like the fact that at the beginning of the film he was this big, muscly guy, and then as Will.i.am says, he developed an eating disorder. I think that's kind of funny.
Yeah, that is hilarious.
And I would never want Sabretooth to stand outside of my school. Creepy.
No, man, they need better security, Shades.
Yeah.
I will not wear red sunglasses in school. Oh.
Exactly. Yeah, why is he running?
Well, because he saw this creepy guy outside the window who clearly was about to chase him.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, obviously. Well, don't you know that one of Cyclops' powers is telepathy?
Oh yeah, I forgot.
You're just toying with him there, Sabretooth. I mean, you can run faster than that.
Yeah.
Victor, don't rip his head off. We've got to go spend $250,000 on him to make him a giant weapon so that we can then just take his DNA and erase his memory. Oh, wait.
I could kill him. Fans will like it when he dies.
No, see, then it would be okay, Shades, because then we'd know that there's precedent for him dying when you didn't think that he was actually dead, when you thought he was dead and he wasn't dead, and then they brought him back again. So that then you could just say, oh, okay, so in X3, he just died like he always does.
That's like one of his mutant powers. He died.
That's what he does. Yeah. Wow, Cyclops in the movie has a lot of powers I didn't know about. I didn't know he was telepathic or that he can't die. He's Professor X and Deadpool and Cyclops.
Yeah, exactly. What
it's
a guy.
Wow. No wonder you like him so much.
He
has heat vision and optic blast. He's got like a little button on the side of his head where he can switch between them.
Yes. That's what the visor does. It can decide for him.
Let me tell you, man, if you have just a straight up optic blast, I don't think you could use it like Superman uses heat vision to heat up like popcorn.
Exactly, yeah.
I don't think you could do that.
Well, yeah, that's the thing with Cyclops' power. He just, it's like getting hit by like a hammer, You beat the crap out of people with your power. You don't, it's not very practical for everyday use. Like, you can't.
I've never really. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, you can't light the popcorn.
Well, see, I've never really thought about it before. I guess I think even earlier in this commentary, I accidentally called it heat vision. I never really thought about the fact that there's a difference, but I guess you're right. There is. And the best way to really think about it, I think, is to remember that Cyclops, I mean, not in this, but Cyclops in the comics has a brother called Havoc who has the same power, except it's not in his eyes.
Yeah.
Like, it works kind of the same way. It's a blast. He can't focus it in a long burst. It just fires off real fast.
Yeah, and when Havoc and Cyclops fire their powers at each other, it doesn't affect them.
Shades, look at this. I don't know if there's a real set of claws in the whole movie.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know.
Okay, when we've got the profile shot on him, those are real, I think.
Yeah.
And then, but then when they're in Fred Dukes' face, they're not.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Well, actually, see, now I'm not even sure when it's in Logan's face. This is goofy.
Yeah.
That's lazy, dude.
It is, yeah.
Well, and what's funny is, it doesn't seem like it would be lazier to do it that way. I mean, how hard would it be to just put a pair of those in it, or a set of those in his hands like you did before in the other movies?
They spent unnecessary money making them CG.
Well, I think so too. Don't they have claws?
Exactly.
I mean, really, in the first X-Men movie, didn't they just put him between his fingers?
Yeah. This is the first time they've been so CG. Obviously they're CG at times, like when they, protrude from his hands. They
have to be there, yeah. Sure.
But Yeah, it's weird.
Uh,
I heard a funny story that Hugh Jackman told about his claws once. He was asked once, "Where's the worst place you've left your claws?" And he left them in his carry-on bag in the airport.
oh
And
no.
so they go through the detector, and the flight people are going, sir, why do you have 6 knives in your bag?" And he's like, "Knives? Oh no, they're my claws." And the guy really didn't know who he was, didn't know who Wolverine was or what the X-Men were.
Oh
So
no, that's.
got into some trouble. Yay, it's Gambit.
Some people don't like this guy as Gambit. I'm going to go on record to say I don't know why. I think he's fine.
Me too. I like Taylor Kitsch was a good Gambit. I thought he was fine. He could have been in a different film.
He's
But
shoehorned in, but I think he's fine.
I don't take issue with anything that he does in this film.
I don't even really have a problem with Gambit being involved in Weapon X, really. It's just. Well, maybe I do in that I prefer to get to see him at some point with the actual X-Men in the X-Men movies, and so then he'd be kind of old, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. He's going to be like really, really old by the.
Well, not really old, but he'd probably be in his 50s.
Yeah, no, you're right.
That's kind of goofy.
Yeah, that's strange to me.
I guess the biggest problem with shoehorning him in here is just that you probably won't get to see him anyplace else.
Yeah, it means you won't get to see his relationship with Rogue. Even though she's with Iceman in these films, obviously, but like some of the stuff that people love about Gambit, they just won't get, which is a shame. I really thought Wolverine would have called him Gumbo and Cajun and stuff that he calls him in the comics. We don't get any of that.
None of that. I do like the idea that Gambit was the one mutant that escaped. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's cool. I like this scene here as well. I can play spine, Johnny boy. We haven't talked about Will.i.am. He's a
Yeah, go ahead.
He's a weird celebrity to have in an X-Men film. Because I don't consider him an actor. He's a celebrity. He's a musical artist. It's funny to me.
Yeah, it's true. Well, maybe he was one of those that was trying to break into acting. He's not bad in this. He doesn't get to do anything.
Yeah, there's some people who like really hate his performance, and I don't think he gives a bad performance. He's just kind of there. So, yeah.
I just think this whole action scene is really awkward. Because it's like I'm fighting Sabretooth, then I'm fighting Gambit, then I'm fighting Sabretooth.
Yeah, his priorities change after this scene. Like, he elbows the living daylights out of Gambit there.
Which is a funny scene, actually. But see, he's about to go into a monologue, and then Wolverine just hits him in the face. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Goes after Sabretooth.
Oh,
Sabretooth.
Here they go! Running at each other, number 2!
See, look how close they are there.
Get him! Yeah, you're right, there's something. That's goofy.
What? Yeah,
See what I mean? It's awkward!
But,
oh man, look, he just pulled a bullseye and knifed him in the hand!
I love the Sabretooth reaction as well. It's like, oh, that hurts. Now,
wow, I like Helicopter Gambit. That's pretty cool.
I like Helicopter Gambit, but how the heck did he get up to the roof?
Oh, good question. He got elbowed in the face. I guess he got up as soon as he got elbowed in the face. But then there were some shots to him on the ground.
Yeah.
Dude, see, it's awkward.
Yeah. Now, okay, Sabretooth runs away here, so now he's got to get through Gambit, which I don't have a problem with, that he's got to get through Gambit, but then after this fight, he says to Gambit, we need to go to the 3 Mile Island. It's like, no, now you need to follow Sabretooth. You need to find him while he's still in the vicinity.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Isn't he the guy that you're going after, not Stryker?
Yeah, what even is your plan at this point?
Yeah.
See, we can't even follow it now because this movie doesn't even know what it's doing. It just wants to have some cool, flashy action scene so that
Yeah.
Gambit gets something to do in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, Gambit looks awesome in these scenes.
This is just fun to look at, and I love Wolverine like on the scaffolding here. This is great.
Look at him. He's shredding the heck out of it.
I like that.
It once again, it looks a little CGI, but I'm okay with it. It's kind of something that Wolverine would do.
Yeah, well, Wolverine's not really a thinker. He just barrels right in. That struck me as something animated series Wolverine would have done.
I was gonna say, there's some funny things that he just slices in the animated series. Like, he's walking through in the Savage Land. He's just walking through the bush, and he just slices things that aren't in his way.
Just to slice them?
Yeah, there's like a vine next to him, and he just slices it. I'm just like, you didn't.
I do like that they got Stryker's son in here to remind us of his motivation.
Yeah. Stryker's son's interesting because I like that he's here because, I liked what they did with Jason Stryker. They took Jason Wingard, Mastermind, and they made him Stryker's son, and it really worked. So I like that. And I like that we're reminded of it here. The funny thing is that this general talks about how he knows that Stryker's son killed his wife.
Yeah.
So in X-Men 2, they talk about how Stryker sent his son to Xavier's school, and he didn't cure him like Stryker wanted. And then Jason came back and then killed the mother.
So that already happened?
I guess that already happened, yeah. Which doesn't make a whole lot of sense when Xavier then recruits the original X-Man at the end of this film. So I guess, Xavier's school is already open, I guess.
Yeah, it's already open, and he waits that many years before he puts his big plan in motion?
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I mean, I guess he was sort of waiting maybe for the politics to get to the place where he could do it sort of legally.
Yeah, I mean...
Because you do have that next, too. I mean, he starts to make his big grand plan when he's kind of got the president in his corner and... Yeah,
you could probably...
That kind of thing.
Yeah, he was, who found out about Cerebro and he found Nightcrawler and stuff like that, so I guess he, it took a while to get his perfect plan in motion, but, it is funny that he waits that long. He also, Stryker just there killed that guy by stabbing him in the stomach.
Yeah.
It didn't look like he stabbed him that far, and that's weird to me.
And how are you gonna sweep that under the rug, dude?
Yeah, he gets surprised in the credit sequence when those guys are like, we want to interrogate you about the death of that general. And he's like, oh no.
Oh, how'd you find out about that? Man, I guess I should have thrown him in something bigger than a trash can.
Yeah. I guess I should have done something with the body.
Man, if only he had played some Hitman, and then he'd know. Shades, I'm gonna ask you a question about something kind of weird that I don't know if I'm the only person that has thought about this, or if I'm just a crazy person. In First Class, of course, they make a really big deal, like they should, about how most people don't know that there are mutants, and they're pretty far and few between, and there aren't very many of them.
Yeah.
And there aren't any big global politics yet about mutants in this movie, clearly, and yet they kind of seem like they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, wouldn't it have been nice if they had some sort of an explanation where, maybe Stryker has found a lot of them and there aren't very many more. You know what I mean? Like just, be smart enough to tell us why there aren't any big questions yet from people about mutants, and why we don't have all of the racism that we have in the other films yet, because it's obviously a world that doesn't seem to know there are mutants, and yet we see mostly mutants in this film. So there's a disconnect.
Yeah, it's funny because the word mutants isn't said that many times in the film. And when it's said, I remember when I first saw this, and Wolverine's talking to John Wraith, and he says, he was rounding people, rounding us up.
Very nonchalantly, he just says mutants like it's just a normal term they throw around.
Yeah. I'd like to know how the term mutants actually started, and we kind of get a hint at that in First Class. Like that woman that young Xavier hits on in the bar says, "Oh, you're referring to me as deformed," and
he says, "No, it's a mutation."
Yeah, and that term just
it's a very groovy mutation.
A very groovy mutation.
I love that.
Yeah, so it's weird. Like, yeah, I don't know. They make a big deal about mutants in this film, but mutants aren't a big issue in the world just yet. Like that General earlier, like, you really hate them, don't you? It's like, hate who?
It's like the movie is too aware of the fact that it's the fourth one.
Yeah.
And therefore, that gets imprinted on the characters themselves. And they seem aware of the fact that we've had X-Men movies before this. You wanna go into a movie like this like you haven't had any yet.
Yeah, exactly.
And so yes, there are maybe some Easter eggs, and there's obviously some foreshadowing of things that happen later, but you don't want to make the whole thing about projecting forward. You want it to stand on its own. In my mind, a really good prequel is one that you could watch before the films that were made prior to that take place later. Most of them aren't that way. And
I think good sequel. Sorry?
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think good sequels as well. Films you can see without having seen the first film and stuff like that.
Well, the difference is sometimes sequels build on the other ones so much that you need the ones that came before it, and that's okay because it's a series or it's an ongoing story. But if it's a story that takes place before something you've already seen, you shouldn't have to have watched the thing that came before it to see it, because the events come before it.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah.
I mean, it's okay if it's made somewhat with the idea in mind that most people that see it will know this stuff, and so there's things in there for those people, but really you ought to be able to watch that. The Star Wars prequels, you ought to be able to watch those without seeing what came after it and still appreciate them. The same is true of this.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like it works on that level.
Yeah, like you were saying, a lot of people who saw this probably saw the first three films, and, they're very successful films, so it's likely that people had, but you're right.
Well, and it ruins the story. The fact that you're already supposed to know that Wolverine is going to lose his memory at the end, and it's almost like we're expected to just want to know how that happens, really actually screws with the story.
Yeah. It's, I found myself constantly wondering when he was going to lose it. And yeah, when it finally happened, it was just kind of, it happened.
It would have been a great deal more interesting, of course, if we hadn't had this big, silly, conspiracy that we're finding out about here, where we're having to rack our brain and go, okay, now wait, what was the big, obscure, convoluted plot again that now Silver Fox is part what? If we hadn't had all of that, it could have been a movie, and I'm saying this being kind of tired of amnesia plots, but, Wolverine's amnesia plot was before a lot of amnesia plots that I'm tired of when you go back to the comics, so I'm putting this in historical perspective. If it had been a film where he loses his memory maybe a quarter of the way through, half the way through, and he's like this character that's kind of got to find himself without knowing who he is, and make it about that.
Yeah.
Because what is a person? A person is, at least partly, a sum of their experiences. So it's interesting sometimes to see a person who is of a certain age that their identity is built up by all those experiences they had. Suddenly you take those experiences away from them, so what makes them still human? And then that's how you deal with the whole animalistic instinct thing. That's how you deal with, at his heart, Wolverine is an instinctual kind of creature. And how does he find his humanity again when he'd like to just go kill whoever he wants to kill? And you build something in him that stops him besides just those experiences that he doesn't have anymore, and you question humanity. You make it that kind of a story. None of that is in this.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, man. Yeah, exactly.
And I'm not trying to rewrite the film, but that's what was there before. that's what Weapon X is about.
Yeah. No, exactly.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ramble on about that. But...
No, that's fine. It's fine. This is the first time I've watched the film where I've really kind of stopped and thought, wow, this really doesn't make any sense.
Number 3, Shades. Here they go. Get him! Get him!
Run. Yeah.
And every time they joust, Wolverine always wins. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. Because now he has metal claws.
Wolverine's always the one that stabs him first.
Yeah.
And there's always some slow motion.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of slow motion in this film.
And it's that irritating kind of slow motion. Oh, look, no blood on his claws.
Yeah. Keep it consistent. Yeah. Once again, CG claws.
It must have been irritating for him to have to keep working with CG claws.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sure they put something there.
Well, I don't know.
I'm sure they just put like wooden claws or something there, and then they put the CG over them. You had to have something, Shades. You couldn't work with nothing there.
I wonder. I know Jackman's a physical actor, so maybe he can, and there is so intense that it might be easier for him to make his veins pop out of his muscles if he doesn't have anything in his hands.
Maybe so, but you'd have to tell him exactly how long those claws are supposed to be and how far away to put the hand from the face.
Well, the claws are kind of inconsistent in length in this film.
Oh, well, then you could have a point. That would be a thing that would help make them inconsistent now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, always CG, so. No, I know I sound like a broken record, but Jackman's really good. He gets a really good acting performance in this film. Even when,
but I don't care about his character.
The problem is that he's given this great performance for a script that doesn't deserve it. He's in fact better than what is on the page. So,
yeah. But like I said, I think a lot of these actors are.
Yeah. Now there are some interesting mutants here because.
Okay.
Coming up, we've got a person who's like, yeah, this guy. Oh no, not him. This person. This I thought was Quicksilver. Because he's got white hair and is being strapped in this thing like he's moving really fast. But I actually don't know who owns the rights to Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch because they're Avengers, but they're Magneto's kids. Yeah.
Well, it might be that they were able to get away with sort of doing him without actually doing him.
Yeah.
Even if they don't have the rights to him, you know what I mean? Because they could just say, well, no, it's just a mutant we made up.
Yeah, exactly.
That just happens to sort of look like him. And there are some, like I said, there's some soundtrack beats in this that get me kind of excited and think I'm watching a better movie than I'm watching. The main theme for this is a really late 80s, early 90s sounding kind of thing. It goes great with this material. Not that this takes place in that time period, but I mean, it fits really well with this. It's sort of like, it sounds almost like upbeat Terminator.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, I really like the soundtrack to this film. I particularly like the track, I think it's just called Kayla, that plays over the Kayla actual death scene later. Harry Gregson Williams wrote a really good score.
So Wolverine has bone claws, and they put adamantium over them, and then they give Wade healing factor, and they build in katanas just into him, and I don't understand how they fit.
Yeah, that should mean that he can't bend his arm.
At all.
Yeah.
Ever.
Like, one of the mistakes in X-Men 1, when they showed the X-ray of Wolverine's skeleton, is that the claws are part of his wrist. And that means that he shouldn't be able to bend his wrist.
No, they can't be part of his wrist. They've got to come out from somewhere else.
Exactly. Yeah, they should be, stored in his forearm. So, yeah, that means that Deadpool, or Wade Wilson, I shouldn't call him Deadpool, I'll piss off fans, that Weapon 11 shouldn't be able to bend his arms because he's got these giant swords in his arm.
That girl's got the diamond form.
Yeah, she's Emma Frost.
Wait, is that actually supposed to be Emma Frost?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Oh, well, they just have completely decided this film's out of continuity, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't realize that was actually supposed to be Emma Frost.
Yeah, in TV spots, like they do in a lot of the X-Men films, they do like a roll call where they'll have the character's name and then show them kicking some butt, and, they actually named Emma Frost. And then she had her own TV spot, where she would say, yeah, she had her own TV spot where it was like this monologue where she said, "My name is Emma Frost, and I'm a mutant." Like a bunch of characters had it, and she was one of them. And I thought, wow, she's kind of a character in this film. And she really wasn't. And then it's retconned in First Class anyway.
Yeah, which I'm okay with because I think Emma Frost made sense to be in that film, although I don't like the actress that plays her at all. But
yeah,
I think we've talked about that. We'll talk about it more when we get to First Class.
Exactly, yes.
Did you know that apparently if Bryan Singer had stayed on to direct X3, Emma Frost was supposed to be in that film and played by Sigourney Weaver?
Oh, did. Very strange casting choice.
That would have been a really weird casting choice, especially because Sigourney Weaver's a bit old for that role.
Well, that's the thing. I think what the plan was that she was going to be an old flame of Xavier's.
Interesting. That might have worked.
I mean, in the Dark Phoenix saga, she's obviously the Hellfire Club have such a big, and the Inner Circle have such a big presence in that story. And I figured that she was going to have something to do with Cyclops in that film, but if she was going to be part of it, but yeah, when they went with when Singer was considering an older actress, I guess I heard that she was going to be an old flame of Xavier's, which would have been interesting.
So, this scene always really bugged me because I realized that if it's possible for this film to degenerate any further story-wise than it already was, it does by having this big climactic battle scene be an endgame fighting game kind of fight.
Yeah.
Like, it really is. It's just that big fight that you get at the end of a bunch of fighting games where, like arcade mode, where you play all the different characters and then at the very end you fight against a guy that has everybody's powers.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what this is. In a really high place. Like this looks like a fighting game arena even, like.
Yeah. Up until he had the heat vision and, I really liked the fight scene. I thought it looked amazing. I just thought it looked really cool. And
yeah, it looks good.
Yeah, I'm not saying it works, but I'm saying as far as special effects go in this film, it's one of the better looking stuff. And I don't get that Wolverine's claws are now like red hot, that he's now able to slice through an adamantium spine.
Or that doesn't hurt.
Yeah, and also he has heat vision, but you'll notice that even though Sabretooth has like ash on his face, his clothes are completely intact.
Oh, that's interesting. So,
bad effect looks.
Before I knew anything about Deadpool, because I've never read some Deadpool, and I much better understand why people get so upset about that in this film, because again, he's characterized pretty well at the beginning, and then they don't really get Deadpool, so that kind of upset them. I was okay with it when they were kind of trying to make this his backstory, and then he'd be the Deadpool we all knew later on in his own film. Because I think it was supposed to be kind of an ironic thing that his mouth is sewn shut. I think that's silly. That's not an irony I like. But whatever. It's the kind of thing where at least he was part of the Weapon X project, and, like, the cancer stuff's not in there, so that's a problem. But, like, I don't know. I think they could have maybe fixed it later. But then these fans have had to wait so long now for a Deadpool film that this is just a lot worse even now than it was back then.
Yeah, well, now that I know that's not going to be canon, like they're just going to reboot the character when he gets his own film, or if he gets his own film, it makes this even more painful, I'd imagine, for fans.
Yeah, I would figure so too. I did a top 10 shafted characters once and got a lot of flack for not putting Deadpool on that list. And the only reason I didn't was because I didn't have a lot of stake in him and didn't really know him very well. But the biggest thing again was I thought, well, he's not really shafted so much as they're just not really doing Deadpool yet. And then the more I see this, I'm like, well, that's not entirely accurate, because the big part of his backstory with the cancer is gone.
Yeah.
So that is a problem.
That is a problem, yeah. I mean, they could still do the whole disfigured thing with him. And they did, the after credit sequence of this film is the end finding his head. So I feel like they could have still given people the Deadpool that everybody knows.
Yeah, I think they could have too, yeah. And that's the reason that at the time I didn't feel like he quite fit to be on a shafted list with people like Bane from Batman and Robin, but...
Yeah, I did a top 10 most miswritten characters list. And,
really? That's interesting. I should go back and look at that.
Yeah. I'm going to redo it at some point, because I don't completely agree with the order of some of the characters, but I also didn't put Deadpool, and I had a lot of comments about that. I also didn't put Bane, because I didn't know a whole lot about Bane at the time. I didn't like Bane. But,
yeah. Well, the problem, of course, is that his characterization before he turns into Weapon 11 is not really wrong.
Yeah.
Although he does kind of become the loudmouth Wade during the Weapon X program.
Yeah.
He's actually not quite that guy yet in the comics, but, Cool. Yeah. Okay, so, now this film just totally goes completely south. I can't get over the shooting him in the head with the animated bullet thing, especially because of the fact that it's deliberate. That he knows somehow that Wolverine will lose his memory if he does this. Wow, what lazy writing. What super hacked writing.
Stryker knows that the bullet is going to find the same place in his brain that memories are held, just like Superman knows that his tongue can find his way into Lois Lane's brain. I don't like it in Superman 2. I don't like it here. There are better ways to do memory loss, and this is a really contrived and stupid way.
Even in Superman 2, it's better because that could just be a power he has. Since they just made up random powers for Superman in that movie.
Well, they did, but, kissing people to make them lose memories are kind of a weird power. I don't know how he knew he had that.
Yeah, but again, I don't think it's the same thing as, I don't want to argue with you about it. I understand why you made that connection, but I never thought necessarily with that kissing her is the thing that makes her lose her memory so much as just maybe he's got a power that he can make people lose their memories, and that he kisses her because that's how he gets close enough or whatever. Like, it's not really explained, whereas here, Stryker just comes right out and says, if I shoot him, he'll lose his memory. That's ridiculous.
No, it is, yeah.
There's an actual on-screen explanation of what's going on, and it's stupider than anything you could possibly imagine.
Yeah. Now,
So people complain that Xavier's walking
I don't
because of first class.
Yeah, I mean, what kind of bothers me is that look how weird he looks. Look at him.
Yeah, he looks strange because they did that, anti-aging thing, but it doesn't look as good as it did in X3.
Yeah, it kind of takes away features of his face, so it just has this really plain-looking face.
He looks like he's almost CG, like he's a computer-rendered character.
Yeah, I thought he might have been, but looking at it here, I might have been wrong about that. But
No, he's not.
Yeah.
He's actually physically there, but they've done so much to him in post that he looks almost 3D rendered.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think I spoke about in the X3 commentary that I think he might have been completely CG. Looking at it here, not the case. But yeah. You're right. They've done so much to him in post that he doesn't look like Patrick Stewart anymore. It's weird.
I do think it might be kind of cool if in one of these movies with them in the past now, although I don't know if they'll do any more past movies past Days of Future Past, but I think it might be kind of neat if he gets his legs back for a while, just because that happened a lot in the comics.
Well, I'm presuming that, even though a lot of things contradict this film, I presume that it's still in canon, as is X-Men 3, and he's also walking around meeting Jean Grey with Magneto there.
Oh, that's a good point, yeah. So he gets his legs, so basically he gets his legs lost in first class in the 60s. He has to gain them back for this, and then maybe still has them by the time he meets Jean Grey and loses them again before X-Men 1.
And he also has to regain his friendship with Magneto somewhere in that time.
Oh. I hadn't thought of that. Oh, you're right.
You know what would have been funny is if in X-Men First Class, amongst Magneto and Xavier meeting all those mutants, including Wolverine at the bar, they just recreate that scene from the beginning of X-Men 3, and they just hose flying up in the air and Chris Claremont's lawnmower flying up in the air. They just recreate.
That's hilarious.
Fassbender.
So yeah, he's lost his memory. We're supposed to care because he doesn't know her. Blah 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 blah. I don't.
I mean, I kind of feel sorry for him that he doesn't remember her. Like when Gambit says, "Do you remember her?" and he slowly answers no, I kind of feel like, oh, that's sad. But at the same time, we didn't get enough time to care about her, so.
Well, and plus, I don't care what her contrived motivation was, and yes, I know what her motivation was, but it's flimsy and I don't like it. For pretending to be dead. So, I see her as kind of a jerk that wasn't worthy of him anyway, and then I'm also thinking, that she's not worthy of the Wolverine I know. This version's blander than that, so I really don't care either direction. I don't know, I feel completely distanced from everyone in this film.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
When Roger Ebert reviewed this film, he said by the time he got to the end of it, Wolverine had become a character that if he saw on the street, he wouldn't even walk across the street to shake his hand.
Wow. I don't know.
That's how uninteresting the character is.
I was gonna say, I thought he still came across as a nice man in this film, but
no, that's not what he meant. He just meant that, like, he didn't care about him.
Yeah, no, yeah. So I guess he's walking until his feet bled.
Yeah.
And he's somehow gained weight in this time.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Well, maybe somebody handed him a bunch of cheeseburgers while he was walking.
Because he kind of looks more like Brian Cox here.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
I think
Brian Cox was devastated that he couldn't do this role.
Yeah, I know. And I really like Danny Huston as an actor, so I'm glad he got to do it. But I do like Brian Cox a lot.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, but, like, he does a good job, but he's no Brian Cox.
Well,
that's just me.
I like him as Stryker. But, you know, I still...
Well, the guy who played young Victor is Michael James Olsen, so his parents were Superman fans.
Yeah, it's funny all these names. Asher Kitty and Tanya Tozy and, yeah. All these actors that I
all these people you've heard of.
Yeah.
Man, it wouldn't be a Wolverine film without some random generic techno to end out the film there, would it?
Yeah, it's a weird score over the credits.
Well, it just right there at the beginning, it's like 25 seconds of random techno, and then kind of regular score after that. Like, what? Okay, all right.
Exactly, it's weird. And this that's playing right now. Oh, actually, no, this is the theme of the movie, isn't it? Yeah, never mind.
Well, Shades, I mean, it wasn't as bad as X3.
No, it's nowhere near as bad as X3. I'll fight anyone to the death who thinks otherwise. It's nowhere near as depressing it's nowhere near as a depressing experience.
No, but it is typical Hollywood fare through and through. It doesn't care about telling a story. It pretends like it does, and that always makes me angry.
Worthy of being part of the same franchise as X-Men 1 and 2?
I don't think it is.
Yeah, yeah, something happened.
Something happened. Well, keep in mind that I mean, I've got high standards for this movie because it's supposed to be the thing that informs one of my favorite superhero films of all time. You got to remember that I put X2 in my top 5 all day long.
Yeah, X-Men 2 is in my top 2. So,
maybe in my top 3. I mean, if I haven't ranked them in a while, but you know, I mean, if I did that,
yeah.
X2, I'm sorry, is always way up there, and I hate it when a film comes along that's supposed to really inform a movie that I really love, and it's way inferior. I mean, it doesn't make X2 a worse film, of course, but it's you want it to be that good, or at least kind of close to that good, because they're sharing the same material.
Yeah, exactly.
And X2 is a pretty smart movie.
It is, yeah. Well, X2 is a very intelligent movie. This movie, X-Men Origins, takes its audience for granted.
It does. It does, and it tries to coast, like you said, on just like kind of recognizability and on fan service, where it's like we're going to throw in things for fans who remember stuff that happened in X2, so they'll go, oh, his son's in this. Okay, see, they're being continuous, but they're expecting us not to actually think beyond. Oh, we recognize that.
Yeah.
They're asking us to be superficial.
Exactly. There are things I like about the film, and you know, I'm close to the film because I have a lot of friends who worked on this film. You know, I'm even looking at some of these names as the credits roll now that are friends of mine, but I can't. And you know, like I said in the X-Men 3 commentary, I want there to be good X-Men films. I don't like having to hate on an X-Men film. But you know, there are things about this film that are really hard to defend.
Yeah, most of the things I like about this movie are just kind of preliminary choices and aesthetic choices. Most of the actual plot choices, I mean, story choices, I think break down someplace. Like I said, I like Gambit. I don't even dislike how Gambit's used, really.
Yeah, me either.
It's just that, I mean, you know, he's used okay in a not very good movie, but I mean, like, yeah, I think he's okay. I like Schreiber as Sabretooth, but I don't think that Sabretooth makes any more sense than Stryker does.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I did kind of sit here and just hate on this film the whole time. I'm just telling it like how I feel like it is. Me personally, there's just not a great deal to latch onto for this film. And I've just liked it more and more every time I've seen it, because it's one of those films that the more you think about it, the worse it is.
Yeah, it's, like we were talking about at the beginning, you know, when we both first saw this film, you know, we liked it, and I think a lot of people had that reaction. I've seen reviews of, you know, people. I know Manos said once that he gave this film a good review, and then went back later and went, oh, I gave that a lot of praise.
He's called that his least favorite review of his.
Yeah, I remember you posting that on your channel, but yeah, it's a shame because I think this film had a lot of potential, and here's the Deadpool scene.
Well, that doesn't make any sense, does it?
No.
So he finds his own head, and then he looks at the camera, and he breaks the fourth wall and tells us to shush. All right,
yeah.
well, I mean, I guess your Deadpool fans got your breaking the fourth wall thing, I guess.
Yeah. Satisfied fans?
Yeah, no, of course they aren't. Yeah. So, that's X-Men Origins Wolverine. Shades, thanks a lot for doing it with me again, man.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks for all the insights. You knew a lot about this movie that I didn't, and all those folks that worked on it. That, you know, I mean, I'm glad that you found more things to like about it than I did, because I think that this would have been a really boring commentary if it had just been two of me sitting here going, "Yep, and that's a stupid idea," and you see that there? That's also a stupid idea.
It's funny because we've very much agreed on these commentaries so far, and I'm wondering if we're going to differ a little bit when it comes to First Class.
I imagine we may a little bit, just because you have more investment in certain comic book things, and I don't know. I think that I really think that movie works as a standalone film pretty well, regardless of the continuity mistakes that it has and things that don't work the way you'd want them to from the comics.
Yeah.
I also think you have to give it a little bit of slack just because of the limitations they had because of bad choices that were made previously.
Well, we'll get to that.
But we'll get to that. Yeah. Well, I'm just saying with there's sort of, I mean, maybe they should have gone with a different premise, but you're sort of stuck if you want to do First Class with, well, we can't really use the First Class unless we reboot, you know, things like that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with them not using Iceman and Angel because they were younger characters, but I feel like they kind of they shoved themselves into a corner when they decided to set it in the 60s. But like I said, we'll get to that, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get to that. Well, everybody, thanks a lot for listening to Geeks Not Nerds, the podcast. I'll be back again very soon with Shades at Night, talking about X-Men First Class, and hopefully we don't like duke it out or anything over that movie, but I don't think we will. I think it'll be fun. And we'll see you next time. I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Shades at Night.
We'll see you later.